The first time I realized my neighbor had built part of his driveway on my property, he was standing on it with a beer in his hand, waving at me like nothing in the world could possibly be wrong. And the weird part is, for a while, I waved back. I had no idea that 6 feet of what looked like perfectly normal concrete was going to turn into the ugliest property fight I've ever been part of, and definitely the most expensive lesson my neighbor ever learned. My name's Ryan Mercer, and back in 2019, I bought a little ranch-style place outside Franklin Ridge, Tennessee. Nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms, decent yard, enough room on the side to finally build the fence my wife had always wanted so the dogs could run around without us worrying every 5 minutes. It felt peaceful out there. The kind of neighborhood where people mowed on Saturdays, waved from porches, and left each other mostly alone. Next door was a guy named Travis Nolan. Late 50s, broad shoulders, always wearing work boots even when he clearly wasn't working. The kind of man who somehow made every conversation feel like a challenge, even when he was saying hello. At first he seemed all right, friendly enough, talked a lot, had opinions on everything. Property values, roofing materials, politics, garbage pickup schedules. If it existed, Travis had a speech ready. His driveway was the first thing I noticed. Wide concrete strip, freshly sealed, running from the street all the way past the side of his garage. It looked bigger than most in the neighborhood, but I figured maybe that's how the lot had been laid out years ago. The previous owners never mentioned anything unusual. No red flags. No paperwork. So I moved in, unpacked, got busy with normal life. For almost a year, I barely thought about it. Then spring rolled around, and we finally decided to build the side fence. Nothing dramatic. Just clean cedar panels and a gate near the backyard. I hired a surveyor because I've learned the hard way in life that assumptions get expensive. Best money I ever spent. A guy named Carl came out one Tuesday morning with bright orange markers, measuring gear, and the kind of quiet confidence that tells you he's done this thousands of times. Around noon, he knocked on my door. He had that look on his face people get when they're trying to explain something awkward without making it worse. He pointed toward Travis's driveway and said, "Ryan, you might want to come take a look at this." I followed him outside. Carl tapped one of the markers with his boot. Then he stretched his tape line. Then he looked at me. "Property lines here." I looked. Then I looked at the driveway. Then back at the marker. And my stomach dropped. Because Travis's concrete wasn't close. It wasn't barely over. It crossed 6 feet and 4 inches onto my land and stayed there for almost 40 feet. A giant section of his driveway. The part he parked his truck on every single day. The section he had resealed just a couple months earlier. Legally, it belonged to me. I asked Carl twice if he was sure. He gave me that polite half-smile professionals use when they've already double-checked before saying anything. Then he showed me the certified plat. Every angle, every measurement, every county record, clear as daylight. I stood there staring at that driveway, thinking maybe there had to be some explanation. Old mistake, builder issue, something. And honestly, I didn't want to fight. I really didn't. So that evening I printed the survey, walked next door, and knocked. Travis opened the door holding a glass of iced tea. "Hey, Ryan." I smiled and kept my voice calm. "Hey, Travis, got a weird one." I handed him the survey. He studied it, long enough to actually read it. Then his eyes lifted. Then he glanced over at the driveway. Then back at me. I figured maybe he'd laugh and say, "Wow, didn't know that." Maybe we'd work something out. Instead, he handed the paper back and said, "Flat, as concrete itself, that's wrong." I blinked. Carl certified it through the county. He shrugged. "County screws things up all the time." I tried again. "I'm not trying to make this difficult. I just figured you'd want to know." That's when his whole expression changed. His jaw tightened. Voice got sharper. "I poured that driveway 12 years ago. Everybody's known where the line is. Previous owner never complained." I nodded. "I understand, but legally he cut me off. You knew people move in, and suddenly maps matter more than neighbors." Then he stepped back and started closing the door. And right before it shut, he said, "That driveway stays where it is." Click. That was it. I stood there with the survey in my hand, listening to his deadbolt slide into place. I remember walking back across my yard thinking, all right, so this is how it's going to be. The next morning, my wife, Emily, looked at me over coffee and asked what happened. I told her. She just stared at me for a second and said, "He actually said no?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, because somehow that answer felt ridiculous. Like saying gravity was optional. Still, I gave him room. Maybe he needed time. Maybe pride got in the way. So I filed the certified survey with county records and mailed him a formal encroachment notice. Certified mail. Signature required. Professional. Simple. No threats. No drama. He signed for it Thursday morning and called me less than 2 hours later. I answered. Didn't even get hello. He said, "You really doing this?" I looked out the kitchen window at his truck parked half on my property. And for the first time, I stopped feeling unsure. "No, Travis," I told him quietly. "You already did." There was silence on the line for maybe 2 seconds, but it felt longer. Then Travis laughed. Not a real laugh either. That dry little breath people do when they think you've just crossed some invisible line. "You serious right now?" "I'm serious." "You've been here, what, 2 years?" "About that. And suddenly you know this property better than I do." I leaned against the kitchen counter. "It's not about what either of us thinks. It's what the survey says." He made this sharp sound through his nose. "Survey's garbage." Then he hung up. And for a minute, I just stood there staring at my phone. Emily walked in, saw my face, and didn't even need to ask. "Still pretending concrete changes legal records?" "Pretty much." She shook her head and poured coffee. Then let the county explain it. That became the plan. I gave Travis 60 days, which, according to county code, was more than fair. Honestly, probably more than he deserved. But I wanted every chance documented, every conversation clean, every step above board. For the first week, he ignored me. Second week, he started parking his truck even farther onto the encroaching section, almost like he wanted me to notice, which I definitely did. Then came the little comments. I'd be grabbing the mail, and he'd say things loud enough for me to hear. Crazy how folks buy a place and think paper matters more than common sense. Or, some people got too much free time. A couple neighbors heard it. Most pretended not to. One older woman across the street, Linda Dawson, quietly walked over while I was trimming hedges. She lowered her sunglasses and said, "You're talking about that driveway?" I nodded. She gave me this look like she'd been waiting years to say something. "That thing's been over the line forever." I blinked. "You knew." She shrugged. "Everybody knew." That caught me off guard. Then why didn't anyone say anything? Linda sighed. "Because Travis makes everything miserable when he doesn't get his way." That told me more than she probably meant to. Apparently 12 years earlier, Travis had widened the driveway himself after buying a camper, poured extra concrete, expanded closer to our side. Previous owner noticed, but was older, dealing with health issues, didn't want conflict. Then time passed, and Travis got comfortable. Really comfortable. Comfortable enough to believe long enough somehow meant legal enough. By day 30, I still hadn't heard anything productive. No contractor. No offer. No acknowledgement. Nothing. Day 42, he resealed the driveway. Again, I actually stood at my kitchen sink watching him roll glossy, fresh sealant across the exact portion sitting on my land. Like a man polishing evidence. He looked over, saw me watching, raised 2 fingers in a wave. That was the moment something shifted in me. Not anger exactly. More clarity. Like, all right, you've chosen your lane. Fine. Day 60 came. Nothing. Day 61, I filed with county zoning enforcement. Submitted the certified survey. Mail receipts. Timeline. Photos. Copies of every note. Everything. 2 weeks later, County Inspector Marcus Hale pulled up in a white truck. Tall guy. Mid-40s. Clipboard. Steel measuring wheel. No-nonsense face. He introduced himself, reviewed paperwork, then walked the property line with me. We measured every point, every marker, every inch. Then Marcus stopped where Travis's driveway crossed. Bent down, checked the county plat, measured again, then nodded. Survey's accurate. Simple, direct, professional. Right then Travis came outside. Perfect timing. He walked over with that same confident stride. "What's going on?" Marcus introduced himself, explained the inspection. Travis folded his arms. "That survey's wrong." Marcus barely looked up. "County records say otherwise." Travis pointed toward the street. This driveway's been here over a decade. Marcus gave him a calm look. That doesn't change the boundary. Travis's jaw flexed. So what, you gonna make me rip it up? Marcus clipped his pen back onto the board. If you don't voluntarily correct the encroachment before deadline, yes. You could feel the air change. Heavy. Tight. Travis stepped closer. Not threatening exactly, but definitely pushing. You people got better things to do. Marcus didn't move. This is your notice. Then he handed him the paperwork. Official correction order. Compliance deadline. Daily fine after expiration. Travis stared at the page, actually speechless. And I'll be honest, that may have been the first time I'd ever seen him without an answer. He turned and walked back inside without another word. Emily came out after Marcus left. Did that really happen? Yep. Did he actually get fined? If he misses deadline. She smiled. Well, this should be interesting. Interesting turned into awkward fast. For the next week, Travis avoided eye contact. No comments. No wobs. No tricks. Then, one afternoon, his brother showed up. Pickup truck. Big guy. Same Nolan face. They stood in the driveway, arguing loud enough half the block probably heard. I caught pieces through the open garage. You should have fixed it months ago. It's not his land. It literally is. I'm not tearing up concrete because some map says so. Then silence. Then louder. Then a slammed truck door. His brother peeled out. 3 days later, deadline arrived. Nothing happened. Next morning, county posted violation. Fine started immediately. Per day. And suddenly Travis got very busy. Phone calls. Contractors stopping by. People measuring. Lots of pacing. Very little smiling. By Friday, a demolition crew rolled in. White utility truck. Mini excavator. Jackhammers. Concrete saw. I was standing in the kitchen making coffee when I heard the first crack. That sharp, explosive sound of steel against concrete. Emily came in, looked out the window, and just said, "Oh, wow." The crew cut a straight line exactly down the survey markers, then started breaking apart slab after slab, chunks lifting, dust everywhere, truck backing up, workers hauling broken concrete out piece by piece. And Travis sat on his front porch, arms folded, stone-faced, watching every inch disappear. Nobody spoke. Not him, not the crew, not me. Just jackhammers and the sound of 12 years of stubbornness breaking into pieces. And standing there with coffee in my hand, I realized the craziest part wasn't that he lost. It was that he could have avoided every bit of it. A simple conversation. One honest fix. That's all it ever would have taken. But pride has a weird way of getting expensive. And Travis Nolan was about to learn exactly how expensive. By the end of that first day, the driveway looked like somebody had taken a giant bite out of it. Broken concrete stacked in piles. Dust all over the curb. Orange County markers still standing there like they had been the whole time. Calm, unbothered, impossible to argue with. Travis never moved from that porch. Same folding chair. Same crossed arms. Didn't say a word to the workers. Didn't say a word to me. And honestly, that silence said more than anything he'd yelled over the past 2 months. The next morning they came back. Poured a fresh edge exactly along the legal boundary. Perfectly straight. Cleaner than it had ever looked before. It actually made me laugh a little because if he'd done it right in the first place years ago, nobody would have thought twice. But now every person driving past slowed down. People noticed. And neighbors talk. Linda from across the street waved me over later that afternoon while I was dragging trash bins back. She smiled and said, "Well, that finally happened." I laughed. Guess it did. She leaned in. You know, he told half this street the old owner gave him permission. That made me pause. What? She nodded. Said they had a handshake agreement. Hier. No paperwork. She gave me a look. Ryan, if Travis had paperwork, you think county would have sent jackhammers? Fair point. And suddenly a lot of things made more sense. Why he'd been so confident. Why he dismissed the survey instantly. Why he acted offended instead of surprised. Because somewhere along the way he convinced himself his version was real. Maybe the former owner had once shrugged and said do whatever. Maybe Travis heard what he wanted to hear. Or maybe after enough years, he simply stopped separating convenience from ownership. That happens more than people admit. Use something long enough, and your brain starts writing stories to protect it. A week later, fresh concrete cured. His driveway ended exactly where it legally should have. No overlap, no misteri, no debate. And the weird thing? He still didn't speak to me. Not once. No apology. No explanation. Nothing. Which honestly was fine. I wasn't looking for closure. I wasn't trying to win some neighborhood war. I just wanted my property line respected. That spring, Emily and I hired a fence crew. Beautiful cedar panels. Warm stain. Black hardware. Simple and clean. I stood outside while they lined everything up with the survey stakes. Every post set precisely. Every panel straight. And when they reached the section beside Travis's driveway, there it was. The clean dividing line. Fence on one side. Concrete on the other. Exactly where it should have always been. One of the installers stepped back and nodded. Looks perfect. It really did. Emily came outside carrying lemonade. Looked at the finished stretch. Then at me. Then over toward Travis's house. And grinned. Funny how much space 6 feet turns into when it actually belongs to you. I laughed. Because she wasn't wrong. For weeks after that, people kept bringing it up. Mailman noticed. Neighbors noticed. A contractor down the road actually slowed his truck and asked what happened. Apparently, the jackhammer show had become neighborhood entertainment. Travis kept mostly to himself. But one evening, maybe a month later, I was watering near the fence when he walked out to his mailbox. First time we'd been that close since everything ended. He grabbed the mail, looked toward the driveway, then toward the fence, then finally at me. For a second, I thought maybe this was it. The apology, the acknowledgement, something. Instead, he said, "Happy now?" Plain, dry, no emotion. I shut off the hose, looked at him, and answered honestly, "I'm relieved." He stared, probably expecting something sharper, something smug, but I meant it. Relieved that the paperwork was done, that the arguing was over, that I didn't have to keep wondering if this would escalate into something uglier. He looked away, mumbled something under his breath, then headed back inside, and that was the last real conversation we ever had. A year later, he sold the house, moved out. A younger couple bought it. Super friendly. We talked the first weekend they arrived. I mentioned the survey markers and the fence line. The husband laughed and said, "Don't worry, we're not planning on stealing concrete." I got a real laugh out of it, and life moved on. Dogs run the yard now. Fence still stands. Driveway still ends exactly where county says it ends. And every once in a while, when I'm pulling weeds near that side yard, I glance over and think about how close the whole thing came to becoming something much worse. That's the strange part about neighbor disputes. They usually don't start with some dramatic screaming match. Most begin with something small. A few inches. A misunderstanding. A quiet assumption nobody challenges. Then pride gets involved. And suddenly people are defending things they never actually had the right to claim. I still think Travis could have handled it differently. I could have too, maybe. Maybe there was some version where we talked it out over coffee. Maybe. But once he looked at certified measurements and decided confidence mattered more than facts, there really wasn't much left to negotiate. Concrete doesn't care who poured it. Land records don't care who feels entitled. And county inspectors definitely don't care whose feelings get hurt. They measure, they mark, and eventually they enforce. So now I'm curious if your neighbor built on your property and acted like they owned it. Would you have let it slide to keep the peace? Or would you have done exactly what I did and let the county settle it? Drop your answer in the comments, because I can already tell this one's going to split people right down the middle, and honestly, I want to hear where you stand.